name is Karen Sheely, and I'm the Dean of the John Carroll's Bowler School of Business. On behalf of John Carroll's President, Father Robert Niehoff, I would like to welcome you to another outstanding offering in the Mellen Speaker Series. The Speaker Series is sponsored by the Bowler School of Business's Edward J. and Louise E. Mellen Chair in Finance, established at John Carroll in 1984 through a grant from the Mellen Foundation. Edward and Louise Mellen were lifelong residents of Greater Cleveland who shared a commitment to the Cleveland community and its institutions. They believed that their resources came from the community and therefore should return to the community to support its institutions, particularly those related to education and healthcare. Through the Mellens' generous support, we are able to bring to campus chief executive officers of Ohio headquartered publicly traded companies to discuss the strategic focus of their companies and the challenges that they face. The Bowler School strives to provide the best in undergraduate and graduate management education. To this end, our programs combine instruction in cutting-edge business theory with opportunities for students to experience firsthand the application of these theories in practice. The Mellen Series is an outstanding example of this approach. In addition, the Bowler School recognizes its responsibility as an institution of higher learning to provide opportunities for community lifelong learning, and the Mellen Series is a natural vehicle for this purpose. I would like to thank today's speaker, Mr. Richard Hipple, Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Brush Engineered Materials, for his willingness to share his expertise with us today. And now, let me introduce Dr. Leroy Brooks, holder of the Edward J. and Louise E. Mellen Chair in Finance, to introduce our distinguished speaker.
Welcome to the Mellen Series. This is the 51st, so we're just past the 25 years. And I'm very pleased to have our 51st speaker here, and Richard Hipple is here today. And he is Chairman of the Board of Directors, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Brush Engineered Materials Incorporated. Before joining Brush Engineered Materials, he held the position of President of LTV Steel Company, a unit of LTV Corporation, and has been with LTV for many years. He joined Alloy Strip Products, the Brush Wellens subsidiary, in 2001 as Vice President. He was Chief Operating Officer of a parent company during 2005-2006. Also became President in 2005. He has served as Chairman of the Board of Directors and Chief Executive Officer since 2006. He also holds board positions, including the Faro Corporation as lead director and Manufacturing Alliance, MAPI, which stands for those originally titled Machinery and Line Products Institute. He's contributing directly to the profession, or to the community, as he was on the boards of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Greater Lakes Service Center Incorporated, and the Cleveland Institute of Music. Mr. Richard Hipple holds a bachelor's degree from the University in Engineering. And now Richard will tell you about Brush Engineered Materials Incorporated. We're very pleased to have you here.
Thank you. Lights in action. Now, because the lights go down doesn't mean you get to sleep, right? All right, when I asked, the first thing I asked this, I had the opportunity to spend some time in the classroom today, and also with the faculty, and just had a great time. And I got embarrassed when I asked the first question. I'm going to do it again because I like to embarrass myself. And that is, how many people know who the heck Brush Engineered Materials are? Okay, see, not many people. Now, we've been here for over 75 years in Cleveland. So what I'm really looking for is some good marketing people, right? Because apparently we haven't marketed ourselves too well in Cleveland. With me here today from the company is our Chief Financial Officer, John Grambo, Pat Carpenter, Vice President of Communications, Glenn Maxwell runs one of our big divisions at Alloy, Dan Scotch is Executive VP of Administration. I think I saw a couple other people who escaped the office early today, which is a real negative. I got their names marked. And Joseph Frannick got out of work early. And anyway, so glad you were able to come here today, but I understand that a lot of you have to come here today. So here, I thought I came here with this big audience, and then I found out you had to be here. So anyway, I'll have to suck it up and live with that. The most important is this is really an honor for me to be able to represent Brush Engineered Materials in front of you today, because it's kind of a neat story. The history of the company, the beginnings of Cleveland, really in the industrial stage. I'm going to take you through a little bit of history, and part of that history is the culture of the company from where we came from, and it's a big part of the culture of where we are today and where we're going and how did we get from A to Z. So I'm going to take you through that, which we call really the transformation in the making, because in the business today, the transformation never stops. It can never stop, or your company basically will fail. So you have to be constantly transforming in today's business world. So the company's heritage is really built on innovation and technology, so it's deeply ingrained within the company. In our recent years, we had a huge challenge to reinvent the company to be successful in the long term. So obviously, a big part of that was our culture was helpful for us to be able to do that, and you'll learn more about that as I take this forward. Now this picture just represents what the company is. And that's a picture of me very confused, you know, trying to get ready for what's next. And that's what it's all about. Where's the puck going? And you got to be where the puck is going. You can't be following the puck around. And so this really represents the company. There's a lot of options in front of us. You got to be ready for what's next. The technology is changing. So many things are changing. And we're here in the United States, we're a manufacturer here in the United States with a lot of extra challenges. So to be successful in that environment, you've got to be quick on your toes and really have to, you know, be transformative basically in what you're doing to be successful in the long term here. And that's the story that I'm going to tell. The history of the company is very neat. The brush, many people think brush is Brush Engineered Materials. Well, what kind of cleaning implements do you guys make, right? And I've gotten that question many times on airplanes and stuff. I'm from Brush. Well, the company's name comes from a man by the name of Brush. And similar to a lot of other companies here in Cleveland, be it the Sherwin-Williams Company, Cover the Earth, Lincoln Electric, Parker, Ogilvy Norton, I think Eaton, a lot of very famous companies in this town. The actual name of the company comes from the actual founder. And in the beginning of the turn of the century of Cleveland, this was a hotbed of innovation and new industries here in Cleveland. And we were founded basically by Brush, a really, really famous guy that probably nobody knows. But what did he do? A lot of you probably don't know that Cleveland was the first city that was lit up downtown in public square by electric lights in the world. And that was like winning the World Series when this happened. You go back and you read the historical reports. And this was Brush. Brush invented the electric arc lamp prior to Edison's invention of the incandescent light. What was more powerful behind that was that he invented not just the light, but was more important was how do you generate the electricity from a power generation standpoint. He invented many, many patents, and he was the one who really generated the original how do you distribute power in the world. And he was a guy, and he went on to develop a big factory in Midtown Cleveland. We have improved our environmental emissions since that time. And he was in all kinds of things. He was an inventor, but basically this was the Brush Electric Company that really expanded very rapidly as the whole electricity side of this country expanded was his technology. Now this particular operation and company was in a lot of other things, by the way, because there were so many innovations going on. The main industry was electrical, but there was aluminum smelting, there was stuff in automobiles, and all kinds of stuff. And this later basically became sold and became one of the original parts of the General Electric company. Now, in the meantime, Brush, this is his house. This is crazy. This house was a huge house in the lakefront. It's no longer there today. But he had the second house in the nation that was electric. All this stuff that we talk about today, windmills, alternative energy, this is the windmill next to his house. Now, here's a man. Look how big this thing is. He basically invented this windmill. And he also invented the storage capacity for the power from the windmill to drive all electricity in his house. Can you imagine if you were his neighbor? They didn't have a lot of codes in those days, apparently. But what a magnificent man. And that's, again, where he started. Now, he went ahead and he had another, he was always generating new stuff. And he had a factory on Chester Avenue where it was his kind of laboratory, the Brush Laboratories. And there was continuing generation of new technology. And a lot of new things were invented and new businesses generated out of his factory. Now, his son, Charles Jr., grew up in this factory, basically tinkering in the laboratory. So obviously he was, the next generation was another innovative sort of guy. He went off to college and went to get his bachelor's degree in chemistry, I think in physics, and came back and joined up with a guy by the name of Charles Sawyer, another famous inventor in Cleveland, and they actually worked in that laboratory development of the early processes of beryllium. And nobody had really used the element beryllium. It's a very special metal before. And they kind of invented the process, how to work with all kinds of new applications. Now, unfortunately, Charles died when he was 35 by giving a blood transfusion to his daughter, and she also died. So what happened was Charles Sawyer went ahead and formed the Brush Beryllium Company in Charles Jr.'s name, and that company was founded in 1931 and became public in 1956 and finally listed on the stock exchange in 1972. So this is the root of our company, beryllium-based business founded back in those roots. So from that real humble beginning, today Brush is about a $1.2 billion company in really high growth, high-paced, high-technology markets from that foundation. So we're a leading manufacturer in the world, of advanced engineered materials and services. What does that mean? Basically, where we try to position ourselves from a technology and innovation standpoint is creating materials that enable the advancement of technology. There's all kinds of challenges out there today in the advancement of technology, and materials are solutions, are required solutions that changes the materials, higher demands, and we try to figure that out with our customers. We have four operating segments, divisions, and we operate across the globe in North America, Europe, and Asia. We're focused really on high growth global markets from high-tech consumers, and I'll share with you some of the applications in a few minutes. Anywhere from the high-tech consumer electronics, from miniaturization to things that get really big, be it commercial aerospace, oil and gas drilling, you pick it. Our four divisions are as follows. On the right-hand side is where the company began. That's our beryllium business. It's what's known as an integrated metals business, which means that you go all the way back to the mine. So we have a mine in Utah that actually the only active one in the world for mining of beryllium, and we bring it all the way through to the factory, service centers, and final products. And that's 29% of the company today. So as you can see, we've really grown from those roots to a much larger company, about 71% expanded from where we started the company. Just to give you examples of some of the neat things, you'll see some pictures in a minute, but in the high beryllium business, we're going to be in satellite structures, X-ray windows, beryllium you can't see with an X-ray, in a lot of the optical devices for unmanned planes and devices. The optical devices and data collection targeting devices are made out of beryllium. Specially engineered alloys. Again, that's another beryllium business. It's copper and beryllium, 2% beryllium. Gives copper magical properties. Anybody that has an iPhone, an iPad, a Droid, an HTC, you pick it, or BlackBerry, our materials are inside there. Those materials for the connector device, the battery connector, the headphone jack, those are using copper beryllium type metals in there because of the kind of properties that we have. So we're in big time in the growth of the electronics world. You'll find us in all the Cisco routers for networking. We're in oil and gas drilling for directional drilling. We have some very specialized materials that enable us to be able to do that. In fact, they couldn't do directional drilling today without our specialized products. Heavy mining equipment, heavy bearings. Anybody that lands in a plane today, when that plane lands, the materials in the bushing and the landing gear is our material. So you really got to hope that we did a good job, right? So you don't want the wheels falling off. Over here, advanced materials, technologies and services, PVD materials. What that is, it's products. We make precious metal type products that are actually used and vaporized. We'll put some micro thin coatings on a lot of electrical devices to give them certain kind of electrical properties. So again, we're all in smartphone type areas, a lot of electronic applications. We're a big supplier of optical coatings, very sophisticated optical coatings, where we'll take our materials and we use those materials, especially materials we have, and we make infrared devices for DNA sequencing, devices for satellites, all the very sophisticated optics and light management will be done by this company. We're the largest independent optical supply house in the United States and maybe the world. We have refining for precious metal, which is the backbone of what we do in the precious metal area, electronic packaging, and advanced chemicals. Advanced chemicals is a big growth area for us, and I'll explain a few of those later. These are the 4 types of segments we have. We're located across the globe. We have 25 operations in the U.S. and 11 foreign countries, and you see big focus on Asia and the growth there, and certainly in Europe and several locations. About 30% of our sales are global, direct exports, but in fact, it's probably closer to 50% of our sales overseas, because a lot of the shipments we have today goes to, let's say, a customer, it might, electronics customer that is headquartered here, but the actual shipment goes overseas, but we might ship to him first. So most of our applications today are international shipments. We play on a playing field to meet material characteristics, design challenges for the materials. We're playing on subsets of needing higher strength, certain strength characteristics, electrical conductivity, weight reduction, light management, as I mentioned, lubricity. That's a one you have to go look up and see what that means. Reliability, miniaturization, corrosion resistance, thermal conductivity. These are all challenges today as things advance out there, and we have a lot of materials that can solve all kinds of design challenges by bringing these attributes together. Again, this is just a picture of kind of where you find our products. This is network computers and network servers would be the big backbone for the internet. You'll find us in shielding devices for the management of electromechanical excess waves that go on. You have to control through our materials. So Cisco is a big customer. Again, I had mentioned all this, the BlackBerries, the iPhones. We're all over the smartphone applications, great growth area. We're in electronic components, high temperature electronic components for automobiles, particularly the higher end ones. The Audis, the Mercedes, the Porsches. We'll have our materials. In the defense area, the both in the aircraft and in the unmanned aircraft, as far as the optical devices, that's where you'll find us. Commercial aerospace, I mentioned the landing gear, a lot of other bushings on there. Disk drives, the hard disk drive market, we're actually the supplier of materials in the pickup read head, very sensitive area for the electronics, and how do you read magically all that data? And this is all material science that's involved here. Medical devices, diabetes standpoint, we have the materials that's on the test strips that measures the glucose. It's a gold plating that's in there that is coordinated with this measuring device that actually measures the amount of glucose in the blood. Oil and gas drilling, I mentioned the directional drilling activities, or the blow-off preventer. For those that watch the TV, when they were sealing the well for BP, that big device that came on there, a lot of the internals of that blow-off preventer device is our material in it. Very specialized material that can hold up to certain kind of strengths and friction characteristics for locking devices. You'll find us in there. Telecom infrastructure, we're in the wireless base stations for connectors and some of the very sophisticated high-temperature compound semiconductors that are used for the backbone of the internet. LEDs, the high-intensity LEDs from a energy efficiency standpoint is basically lights will be replaced over time with high-intensity LEDs for energy savings. A big growth area the high-intensity area is really supplied by our materials in a couple of different ways, both with the precious metals and some of our inorganic chemicals are used to really intensify the phosphors and the light intensity. LCD, same thing, the backlighting. Optics, I mentioned about that. The alternative energy is our material sets. You have materials required for the thin film coatings. A lot of specialty materials there. So the advancement of thin film for the alternative energy, again, is a lot of material science required to solve and get better efficiencies and lower costs. Space and science, for those that are aware of the Hubble telescope is going to be replaced in a couple of years with what's known as the James Webb telescope. And that James Webb telescope is, this is kind of a picture of what the data collection device that shot up in space. This is just the framework, and that's all coated, not coated, but polished beryllium. Well, as that whole device is made out of 100% beryllium because of its optical nature. Fascinating type applications that we get into. Heavy equipment, we're all over the Caterpillars and Bucyrus and heavy mining, again, solving all these heavy loads, reliability issues. So what an exciting marketplace that we have, and all these areas have a lot of growth to them right now, in spite of, let's say, a soft economy that we see. So how did we get here? Certainly this was not a typical straight line growth curve. In the 1930s, the 1970s, we were kind of a traditional, I call it integrated metal company, which means you're integrated back to the mine, basically working on the beryllium and beryllium alloys. In the 1980s, we began some early acquisitions into the specialty metals area, which included, particularly in the precious metal area. A lot of people think of specialty metals like nickels and aluminum, things like that. I'm talking about really high-end stuff, platinum, gold, and to a lesser extent, silver. And then we started to push in the 2000s into advanced materials with strategic acquisitions and additional product development. And the issues that we had as a company that we had to respond to and transform is that the growth of the core beryllium businesses that we had were really flatlined. So that was problematic. We also needed to improve the business model that we had. When you're in an integrated metals business, it has a lot of challenges because you have tremendous working capital involved, you have high fixed costs, you have high reinvestment requirements. So any business that has those characteristics, and as you go through business cycles, you can lose a lot of money because you can't necessarily take all the cost out in a high fixed cost type model of the business. So you can get a lot of trouble in a hurry. So as this country kind of went on and we started to hit more and deeper recessions, we had a big challenge in front of us. So we said we had to move, get better in that business, but then kind of change our business model to be less capital intensive. And then we also wanted to have all of our business have a stronger value added strategy to all of our businesses. So that was, that's kind of what I call situational analysis. So from that, we developed just a high-level set of company goals, and that was really how do we get sustainable market advantage. We wanted to get sustainable market advantage, which you have, the only way to do that is to bring special value to your customers. And from us, what we, the culture of the company was to do that through technology, our technology capabilities, service, and continue this chain of innovation to really get this differentiation and growth back into the company. We needed to decrease the dependency on that integrated business model while continuing to improve its performance. And then we needed to create a corporate critical mass. We need to get bigger so we can perform better as we improve the model to perform better when we face significant downturns as a company. And we wanted to do all this while building and maintaining a very strong balance sheet, not get up too high, strong balance sheet and a higher cash generation model. So these were all our goals that we set out to transform the company from the kind of the core 60-65% of the Brilliant business. So the strategy that we went about was simply to diversify the base, focused on higher than gross domestic product opportunities. So we want to grow faster than GDP. So you do that with new technologies, new markets, new products, expand our geographic footprint. So we worked on all of those fronts in a very surgical basis on how do you go about that. What markets do you want to attack? Well, you want to attack these markets that are going to grow faster than GDP, and then you want to grow faster within those markets by getting very specialized applications that are really going to help the advancement of technology. So what we wanted to do is achieve double-digit growth, which is a very high aspiration in a company over time, by implementing this particular strategy. The first priority was obviously organic growth. Organic growth in a company is always the most healthy growth you can have. And then the second priority we had was if we kept a clean balance sheet and continued to grow, we could do what I call modest acquisitions, which means don't bet the farm on big acquisitions. A lot of companies do that. And if that acquisition doesn't work out, you'll find any kind of business books you read, percentage of successful acquisitions are quite low. Lots of times people take that strategy anyway, and you can wind up tanking the company, get in a lot of trouble, and way too high debt when you're with a cyclical business. So we wanted to stay away from that. And as we did this, we were again surgical about the growth. We said we wanted again grow on businesses that had lower capital intensity, both working capital and reinvestment. We want to invest in high intellectual property, technology-driven businesses, and non-commodity products, very high margins. So that included both the acquisition side and also as we invested in the internal growth in the company. And any time that we did an acquisition, certainly the goals were to have that acquisition quickly accretive to the company, which basically means you get your positive earnings per share in the first year. That's what immediately accretive means. Again, another tough goal, and we basically have been able to achieve that. And for our company and our size and our balance sheet, we could do about $50 to $75 million a year in this area and keep this train running. So here's the results of that, which is kind of exciting. We've been growing this company since 2002 at a 17% compounded annual growth rate. And it's 13% compounded annual growth rate without the acquisition. And you can see, if you look at recession to recession, in 2002, our revenues were $373 million. I should have rounded those off. It looks like an accounting guy did that. And in 2009, it's $715. So from recession to recession, it's more than double the size of the company. And look what happened to us from the last recession. We grew a little bit coming out of that recession. Look at this pop. So the goal of being able to create a company that had a higher growth rate and back in here we had a much higher debt load. We were in deep, deep trouble here. We were able to withstand this recession. Not that it certainly was a big struggle because 2009 was very tough, but we were in much, much better shape in this recessionary cycle than we were back in here. And we've bounded back here extraordinarily fast to be a $1.2 billion company and with a very good growth path ahead of us. From a shareholder value standpoint, being a public company, this is also an important metric that we have to have in front of us. And since 2005, you can see where we've been. Brush is the green, and I would say probably there's a lot of different kind of indexes here, but since we're a fairly small company, as a publicly traded company, the Russell 2000 would be an index that kind of represents smaller companies. So we have grown in the last 5 years from a shareholder value. It's been obviously a bumpy ride, been huge swings in the stock market, but we're basically 56% up from where we were in 2005, whereas the Russell 2000 is up 7, and a couple of other indexes, the maximum one versus us is 11%. So this strategy not only has made the company a lot more healthy, but our shareholders have also benefited by the strategy that we've that we followed. This also chart indicates the nature of the company and how it's changed from the integrated metals portion in 2002, 50%, and today that's 29%. So you can see how that business model has shifted to what I call the lower capital intensity, lower working capital model. Although this particular piece of the business, the 29%, is much more efficient than it was back in 2002 from a working capital standpoint, an overhead cost standpoint. So actually we've significantly driven down what's known as the break-even point of that business, so that if things turn negative again, even this business will not damage the company anywhere near to the extent that it has damaged or challenged the company in the past during cycles. The other key objective was to get a nice diverse set of markets, so we could enjoy both growth, and also if you had a market blow up on you, it wouldn't necessarily disturb the whole company. So you can see as this little portfolio shows that the company has a great market mix between consumer electronics, which represents primarily wireless side. Again, just to give you a few metrics on this, it's kind of fascinating. Maybe not fascinating to you, but fascinating to me because I'm in the business, right? So, okay, cut me a break. But if you think of a cell phone, you can look at basic markets for cell phones. They've been growing at about, call it 8 to 12% a year global consumption for cell phones. Now the smartphone piece of it, which represents the iPhones and Androids and all those kind of devices, they're growing at 30%. And the amount of electronic intensity, if you will, that's required within those smartphones is a multiplier of 4 over a standard cell phone. So just think about, start multiplying all the growth there. You're talking about a market that's growing at 30% a year, plus the stuff that's inside is a multiple of 4 versus a standard cell phone. So that's how you get surgical in a market. That's the market I want to be in, right? So, great place to be. Defense and science, it's been a growth area, been very, very stable, and although we may hit some bumps in the road in the future with kind of budgetary issues in Washington. Commercial aerospace has come back very strong now, and industrials, all this heavy mining equipment. As you get all the crazy prices for gold and copper, and you see all the raw material prices escalate, price of dollar tanks, the price of all this other material goes up, well, what do you think results in that? There's a lot more guys digging for stuff out there, right? And so as they dig for more stuff, they buy more equipment, and that's our sweet spot. We solve a lot of problems in heavy equipment and heavy equipment applications. Automotive electronics is normally thought of as a sleepy market. What I call a sleepy market to me is a GDP market, gross domestic product across the world. But if you're in electronics, they're jamming a lot more electronics in all the cars. So this is actually a nice growth market for us. Telecom infrastructure. My goodness, can you imagine that as the next generation of these phones come out, and it's currently now, let's take the iPhone, that you can have streaming video from person to person. Can you imagine the data flow that's required to do that? And you keep multiplying this over hundreds of millions of people. The systems can't handle that. It's crazy. All right, so that just results in a whole investment cycle in the backbone for infrastructure across the globe. And this just keeps on going, so that's a great spot. Appliances is a GDP market. Medical is a big market for us. It's growing. We've targeted this one. I mentioned the glucose testing equipment we're in, and this will be expanding. Energy, we're big in oil and gas. That's growing, and also a big growth area for us that we intend. is the whole alternative energy side of the equation. We've got a lot of neat material solutions in that side of the house. So you can see as we've kind of balanced this portfolio, even with some difficult business conditions, we have an opportunity to continue to grow and sustain ourselves. So, again, as we've transformed, well, I like to say transform your world, with all the different magical technology that's going on, we've also transformed our world at the same time. So we're more diversified as a company, both our markets and products. We have a broader geographic reach. We're growing faster. Our growth is more sustainable. That's the question. Yeah, I got a question in the last student section that, well, can you keep this up? Well, this is how we're trying to do it. You know, we're trying to position the company in a lot of these markets that offer tremendous growth and have the technology innovation behind it to be able to keep that up. We've created a company that's a lot less cyclical, so that we went through this down cycle in a much better position than the last one. We have lower infrastructure costs and lower capital costs, expanding margins and stronger cash flow. So it's a tremendous transformation that we've been able to take this company through. So lessons learned for Brush. To be able to accomplish this transformation is primarily, you got to start with the customer and you got to start with the markets. And that's where we started. And then you have to be attached to those customers. You have to be attached to their technology demands, to their technology roadmaps. And that's where we are. We're attached to the hip of the customers and trying to figure out where their technology is going so that we can follow that, we can help them develop and solve their technology problems. The change is constant and relenting in this world. And so as I mentioned at the very beginning, you've got to be where the puck is going. You can't follow the puck, you got to figure out where it's going. And as the company grows, there's a lot more challenges when you're a small company. So we've got a huge portfolio of capabilities, and to really leverage the company, we have to leverage some of these synergies and technologies. It's a big challenge for us today. We're getting some of that done, but that's a big challenge as the company grows. The other challenge that a company has is to sustain innovation and to sustain growth. You also can't grow into a bureaucratic place. So there's no place for bureaucracy and no place for status quo. So it's really, I hope, an exciting place to work, how we're structured as a company and how we're generating all this growth and new products and opportunities. We really really try to achieve a non-bureaucratic type operating model. And then the other challenge you have is as you have acquisitions and growth and new products, you better have a strong operations model, which means just the blocking and tackling and making stuff. You know, what are your yields? What are your productivities? How do you improve? How do you constantly improve? And what we do is what's known as, maybe some of you heard about lean manufacturing, some of you heard about Six Sigma approaches. We've combined those two, and it's a very tight discipline in the company, applying a lot of optimization in the company through a Lean Sigma program. Very, very important to the success of the company. And if you don't have a strong operations model, all the wheels can fall off. So you can have all these crazy, wonderful new products, and if you can't deliver to the customer on time, do it in high quality every time, you've got a big problem. Your growth will stop and your growth will be stunted. So again, that's another fundamental foundation for the company. And again, no risk, no gain. You can't be doing this without taking some risk. And we have stubbed our toes, we have made errors, we've had opportunities in front of us that haven't worked. But if you have enough of these irons in the fire, you're going to come out successful. But you can't have your head in a foxhole worried about every darn thing you do not being successful. I do have one other slide, but I'm not going to show it yet because I want to pause here and just ask for any kind of questions that you might have on Brush, its foundation, what we've done, etc. Yes, sir. Yeah. Not at this time. But we may, there's a philosophy here. When you are a growing company and you can invest that, improve the company, it's much better than you did. because you don't get a lot of reward in the investment community and a growth company for offering a dividend. If you're a company that doesn't have a lot of growth, it doesn't know how to apply your excess cash successfully, you should take a part of that and make a dividend out of it. That makes sense, instead of just stockpiling cash. But if you have an effective strategy of how to grow the company effectively and continue to grow your earnings per share, that's much more healthy to apply money in that bucket than a dividend. But that can be debated quite a bit on the investor community. But there's no right answer, but that's our answer right now. Flat lines, generating, can't figure out things, I think dividend's a wonderful thing. Yes, sir.
Industry-wide challenges do you see in the future?
What's that?
What industry-wide challenges do you see in the future?
That's my next slide. Hold that. Next question. I'm coming back to that one. Yes, sir.
So the revenue decrease in 08 and into 09, which segments do you feel that did the worst?
We had one division lost 70% of its revenue. Can you imagine that? And we had another division who that gentleman represents over there that came with me lost about 50% of his revenue overnight. Can you imagine managing to that situation? It's incredible. And I've been around, I'm an old guy, I've been around 35 years. I have never, ever experienced a recession, the speed at which it occurred in 2009. It was absolutely unprecedented. I mean, the world froze up. It's never happened before. In fact, you see that big diverse marketplace? They all tanked almost simultaneously. So those were the two hardest hit businesses. We had another business that went back, and those businesses were losing money. Obviously, you can't keep your head above water with those kind of revenue. We had another business that lost about 30% of its revenue, our biggest one. They kept their head above water. They continued to make money with a 30% loss in revenue. Yes, sir.
Looking at your statements, 2008, total revenue sales went down 5%, but your income went down 65%. Couldn't you adjust a little better than that?
Well, that was a year, and we lost that was when I say we were not a perfect situation. We had a tremendous growth in the company at that point in time in one particular market area, and we actually got some extra profits that year on a metal write-up. So we had actually bought some metal that a very special situation. I'll share this with you. We had both the media, it's called the media, a hard disk drive market. We grabbed a new piece of the market. Huge growth potential, which we actually achieved. But we bought a bunch of raw material at about $100 an ounce. Not a meaning to you. But that raw material that we bought went from $100 an ounce to $800 an ounce almost overnight. So we got all this free profit. So it really didn't represent a normal operating situation. You don't, just because you lose the inventory value, that you adjust operations. So what happened to the company at that point in time is that we actually lost that market. So we actually had higher profits in that market, this one special market. We were making a ton of money on it. And we, in addition to that, we made extra money on this inventory write-up that we had. So we had this huge profit spike in 2008 or 2007, and then you know that we lost that in 2008, which is why you see the income level coming down. Now, what's interesting to this is now compare that to where we are in 2010, and what I mentioned before was very important is we stubbed our toe in that market. It happened to be a quality issue, and it was a market that we entered that we had a great product, but the dynamics were so tremendous we couldn't keep up with it. But the secret of the company is we don't have all our bets on one table. So we lost that one, We've had lots of other growth going on and lots of other opportunities. So the company has even recovered from that, recovered from the recession, and we're making a heck of a lot more money today than we were there, and a lot more growth.
Even in 2009, you even did far worse. You still had 715 million in sales. You had
Sure. Now, the,
75% of the sales that you did in 2007,
now there's we didn't, and here's the difference. What
we grew.
is in the precious metal side of the business. So what you have to look at our company is what's known as the value add. Because the precious metal, we're a much larger precious metal company. So our revenues at that point in time in the precious metal line are much higher, and that's all pass through. So you really have to look at the value add profitability of the company. And the value add profitability of the company was much higher in this recession than the last recession. So there's numbers here that don't come out in the annual report. Other question?
Yes, sir. To your previous point that you made to that gentleman, being a lot of these fast growth markets, you can see them take sharp nosedives as well.
Yes, sir.
What have you been doing to mitigate that risk? Because I know a lot of investors can be weary about investing in a company that shows those large swings.
The way to look at it is to look at it differently. 2009 was a special situation because that wasn't a market going with it, the whole economy was crashing. So then if you take that one off the table, and then you take a look at the standard market, markets can swing. So to me, the better position is you look at the markets that have what I call systemic macro growth curves. And those markets are going to cycle like this. So you'll have quarterly swings, you'll have inventory adjustments along the way. So you'll find that our company, our earnings will swing quarter to quarter depending on what's cycling out there. But all I care about, I don't really care that we have a quarter that's down because that's going to happen. You can't prevent that. I want to be in the markets that the lows are higher and the highs are higher. So we will have cyclicality in the company, but what you'll find the way we have positioned now in these markets, they're fundamental growth markets. They can go into adjustments, but we should continue to have higher highs and lower lows. So that's the kind of model that we're trying to build. So yes, we will have cyclicality, but you'll be protected from cyclicality if you're fundamentally in markets that have very good macro trends. So we want to position ourselves in the good macro trend markets, and you kind of pick those where you want to be at. Now you're not going to be right all the time. So if you have enough bets placed across the table, you ought to win at the end. Other questions? I do have another slide. I'm not forgetting about you. I want to flush these ones out first. Yes, sir. Oh, a lot. I mean, we have a lot of sales in Asia. We have a few manufacturing facilities in Asia. A lot of marketing sales people. And one of our strategic principles we have today is we've got to get more manufacturing there. So we'll be moving, investing more into Asia. Because that's where the growth markets are. And you can't service everything from the United States. So we will be making more investments over there. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you market your product?
Oh, boy. We go through, depending on the business. Our biggest business is direct sales because it's a really high-tech sale. And then in our, so it's really a direct sales force for one of our businesses. And the other business here that this gentleman represents, it's kind of a combination. We go through a lot of independent distribution. And then what we do is, instead of the direct sales, we have technical marketing people. So what we'll do is we'll go out to end users, like an Apple or like a big components manufacturer. and we sell the attributes of our material and get designed in. Now, we won't make the direct sale, but where we try to play is get our material engineered in. You don't necessarily do that with just strict sales. You do that with an engineered sale. So basically, a lot of our effort as a company is in that technical marketing side, and then going through regular sales distribution of a distributor, several distributors across the world. And by doing that, it helps keeping working capital down, third-party distribution. And in this other business that we go to direct sales entirely, you can imagine you're not going to go through independent distribution for precious metals. Just to value working capital. I mean, that stuff leaves the plant and it goes directly to the consumer overnight. It gets air expressed. So we actually have different models across the company. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, that's all right. You got the floor, but we're cutting that guy next.
We deal with precious metals, I would think the vendor base is important. You ever deal with loss companies going out of business in terms of material suppliers?
Well, there's a strange and wonderful world in the precious metals. We don't buy from a mine because if you can think, if you're handling gold at $1,300 an ounce, who could afford that working capital? Okay, so we actually buy our metal from banks who actually are getting their stuff from mines. So the bank is actually providing a service for us where we actually lease the metal, so that we don't own this metal. It's in a vault. It goes through a factory. We do wild and wonderful things to it. The day it leaves our factory is the day it's priced and the day we build. So we actually kind of rent the metal as it goes through our facility. It's really a neat operating model. So we've never had a problem from a metal supply standpoint because we're really not, we're kind of getting it from a whole different kind of distribution system that you would think about. Any other questions? Oh yeah, we have one back here.
I see for 2009, cash and cash equivalents compared to short-term debt, Russia has 4.5 times short-term debt. How do you plan on paying that off?
How do we plan on what?
Paying that off in short-term?
We have debt today that's on our balance sheet of about $80 million, and we have a credit line, and then basically as we generate cash, that credit line will be paid down as we go through the year. So we don't have a lot of debt as a company. If you take ratios, our debt to EBITDA is less than 2. By the end of this year, I think our debt to total cap will be about 15%. Today it's maybe 20-25%. So those are very good, clean ratios. And we actually took on a little higher debt because we actually made 2 acquisitions right at the end of the recession. We actually made 2 acquisitions at the end of 2009, early 2001. So our debt position peaked up a little bit because of those acquisitions. What was kind of neat is because of our clean balance sheet, how many companies were making acquisitions in the middle of the recession. So by having our philosophy of keeping the clean balance sheet, we were able to strike when the iron was hot, when you can get some pretty cheap deals in the middle of a recession. So that we were able to take and stretch, not really stretch our balance sheet, take it up a little bit on the debt side. So that's exactly what happened. Other questions? Okay, last slide. Okay, challenge is facing U.S. manufacturing. This is a global marketplace. And unfortunately, there's a lot of negatives here in this country. The legal and regulatory costs in the U.S. are high. The tax policy that we have in this country does not support U.S. investments. We have many environmental policies that can be political. They're not science-based. can be very, very damaging to the success of our country. And meanwhile, the competition for capital is absolutely global. So if you have a negative environment in this country, why would you invest here? It's unfriendly. When we talk about jobs, we want jobs. Well, we better have a much more friendly environment here in this country if we want jobs. That's the answer. Stimulus is not the answer. All these other crazy things, those are all financial trick bags. You've got to have the ability to attract capital in this country for the long term. Those are the problems that need solved. And that's the final here. The jobs in the U.S. depend on a more favorable environment that supports investment here. Those are some real other challenges that we face as a country. So that was, the slide was trying to answer your question back there. So I don't know if you want to take it from here.
Well, I would say more specific to your industry, like your competitors and your own company. What are you guys having challenges with, and how you plan to overcome them?
Well, I think that we have an interesting philosophy about that, is that we try not to, you have to be aware of your competitors, but you're not trying to do what the competitor's doing. You're trying to develop a model with your customer to continue to push that envelope to solve his problems. How can you bring more value? How can you bring, so it's basically, we've got all of our efforts into trying to be something unique to the customer and the value that we bring to them. We're not trying to say, well, what's the value that competitor brings? We're trying to find out from the customer, what can we do better? So that, you know, you're always competing on, we're competing on the technology front, product development front, we're competing on the cost front. So again, the things that we're doing is, I mentioned before about the Lean Sigma on the manufacturing floor to get much more efficient, continue to drive costs down, productivity up. We're challenged today because of the amount of technology that we're driving to the marketplace. A lot of the great opportunities we have in front of us doesn't happen by magic. You know, we need people to do that, people with very, very high skills. And quite frankly, we're having a hard time today finding skilled people. And again, you read these reports about high unemployment rate. There are tremendous opportunities for people today in the manufacturing world. But it's the skill sets that are required. So we're looking for high technology skill sets that need to be, that, you know, we're looking for metallurgical engineers, we're looking for ceramic engineers, we're looking for optical engineers. We're looking with people with good operational skill sets that don't have to have engineering degrees. There's a tremendous amount of demands for people right now. You're really quite fortunate here. There's a demographic hole in this society because of, you know, for years, because of all the battles that we were fighting, we couldn't hire people. It was very difficult to hire people. And you had, you know, manufacturing was basically being wiped out in the United States for a lot of reasons, a lot of things that could have been prevented by better policies in this country. But in fact, that happened. So a lot of people lost interest in manufacturing. Then we've lost a big skill set in this country. And so we're trying very hard. We're looking at better policies in this company to bring in younger talent, to bring in people from the colleges that we haven't really done. And then you look at this whole baby boom, there's much more baby boomers retiring like me than the new workforce, skilled workforce coming into the economy. So in the end, things are bad today, but I really do think for skilled people coming out of college today, it's going to get a lot better because the demographics are pretty ugly out there for people trying to run companies. And if you talk to other chief executives of other companies, they're going to tell you the same thing. And you know, so anyway, I think it's really hopeful for everybody here. I don't know how it is finding a job coming out of John Carroll today, but I'm sure there's a lot of tough stories. But over time here, not too distant future, this thing's shifting, and I think that the demographics are going to be overwhelming to really thirst for good new people coming into the business world because there's a tremendous amount of retirement going on in the world. the Cleveland area, we have about 2,200, 2,300 employees. In Cleveland, we have about 125. It's just the corporate headquarters and the and headquarters of a couple of other divisions. We don't actually make anything in Cleveland. We have factories near Toledo, Ohio, Reading, Pennsylvania, Brewster, New York, in Providence, Rhode Island, Tucson, Arizona, Albuquerque, Fremont, California, Hartford, Connecticut. Well, I'm doing an amazing job. I forget the name of this. Delta, Utah is our mine, and then we have a factory up near Boston, about a half hour out of Boston. It's one of our optical facilities. And another factory in Buellton, California. So we're all in Lorain, Ohio. So that's really the closest factory we have is Lorain, Ohio. So we're all over the place. Questions? Yes, sir.
On your slide, it says tax policy does not support U.S. investments. What
Right.
type of a tax policy would you?
Well, I could speak on many, but we'll just focus on one. And that's simply the corporate tax rate. The normal manufacturing company is paying a 35%. So why don't we change it? Let's get competitive in the world. Let's make it a 20 or 25% corporate tax rate, make it the average of the world, and eliminate all the other stupid tax breaks. Just get on with it. You know, we just talking fogs. In the meantime, the country's burning with manufacturing jobs and jobs going overseas instead of solving the darn problems. We have to be competitive. We have to have a friendly environment to invest in this country. Other questions?
Thank you, Richard, for being 51st Series Speaker.
I'm going to play 51 in the lotto tonight, right? It's the 51st guy. Just get on with it. You know, we're just talking fast. In the meantime, the country's burning with manufacturing jobs and job instead of solving
First, I have Jake.
we have to be competitive. We have to have a friendly environment to invest in this country.
Tokens of our appreciation to being here.
Other questions?
Thank you, Dave. Before we start the reception, a brief recognition is needed, and for those that helped make it possible. First, appreciation goes to the Mellen Foundation for definitely making it possible. For aiding us at Brush Engineered Materials, special thanks to Pat Carpenter, who did all the arrangements on that side as Director of Corporate Communications. And on our end, my assistant, Kathleen Stover, who made all the connections and all the stuff we need to do, necessary arrangements for that this end. And to the students here today from the Fuller School Financial Management Association for their help. We look forward to seeing you at the 52nd Mellen Series Speaker this spring. We had a planned speaker, but for very justifiable reasons, in the last 2 weeks, he backed out. So if you have suggestions or anything, you can catch me during a reception, or just send me an email to Mellen at jcu.edu, or possibly looking for a string of our latest speakers. Reception now continues to 7 o'clock. Richard Hipple will be available during reception if you'd like to. And thank you very much for coming.